Let us learn today the second chapter from your snapshot book, The Address by Marga, Minco. The Address is a short story highlighting human predicament that follows war. Predicament means a difficult, unpleasant situation. The setting of the story is post-World War II and the persecution of the Jews by Hitler's Nazi forces. Before starting the chapter, let us learn about the author, Marga Minco. Marga Minco was a Dutch journalist and writer who later in her life started writing novels and stories based on her experiences during the World War II. Her youth and her experiences during the war inspired her to start writing novels and short stories. She was born on 31st March 1920 in the village of Ginneken in the southwest of Netherlands to a Jewish family. She was the only member of her family to have survived the Second World War. Her parents, her brother, sister all were deported to concentration camps and never returned. Concentration camp, as we all know, a place in which large number of people are deliberately imprisoned in a relatively small area. So, after she escaped, she spent the rest of the war hiding with the poet and the translator Bert Wheaton, whom she later on married. Her first book, the short novel Hayat Bitre Kuriyat in 1957, The Bitter Herbs in English, described the deportation of her family and her own survival in hiding during World War II. Most of her books are partly autobiographical. They often relate to the persecution of Jews during World War II. Minco's work are distinguished by her sober and reserved way of using words and emotions, leaving the reader to interpret its true meaning according to them. Now, before starting the chapter, I would like to tell something about Second World War. Second World War was a global war that lasted from 1939 to 1945. It was the deadliest conflict of human history between the Allied powers, Great Britain, Soviet Union and USA, and the Axis powers, Germany, Japan and Italy. During World War II, the Nazi under Hitler invaded Holland, where 90% of the people were Jews. Many of the Jews fled away in fear to other countries. Thousands were imprisoned in concentration camps and used as labor or for medical experiments unto death. By the end of the war in 1945, some 60 lakh Jews who were staying in Germany and other territories occupied by German Nazi forces had been killed systematically by the German Nazi forces led by Hitler, something which is known as Holocaust. Hitler and other like-minded Germans had considered the Jews along with some other races of people as people of inferior racial quality and as enemies and robbed them of all human rights. They first put them in confinement centers known as ghettos and then to the concentration camps which were built in many places in Germany and other occupied territories and killed them in millions. When the war ended in the year 1945, some of the Jews got liberated from the concentration camps by the Allied armies. The story, The Address by Marga Minco, is a story of human suffering and destruction that war brings. Although the story narrates about loss and regret emanating from the persecution of the Jews during the Second World War, Minco, while narrating the post-war challenges of the survivors, also puts before us the personal challenges we all face as individuals in revolving crises in our lives. The story, The Address, is set against the background of World War II. The Address is a poignant portrayal. Poignant means evoking a keen sense of sadness or regret. So the address is a poignant portrayal of a ruthless devastation that war causes. It underlines the human dilemma that follows war and that of a loved one. The narrator and her mother, Mrs. S., were Jews living in Germany and in perpetual danger of being imprisoned or persecuted. Most Jews left their homes, finding shelter in a safer place. The narrator in the story is unmistakably a survivor of the concentration camps, while others from her family, her mother, had died. Only she, the narrator, survived the war. The narrator came back to the town where she used to live with her mother in search of her mother's belongings after the war, which had taken away by Mrs. Dorlings from her mother at the start of the war. The narrator went to the address Marconi Street number 46, but the women refused to recognize her as she did not want to return the things she had taken. The story also depicts the complex human emotions of intimacy, trust, hope, and betrayal. It speaks of the greed and vices that afflict a human being and how it makes them do horrible things like breaking other people's hope, lying, stealing, cheating, etc. In the end, the narrator decided to forget the address where those belongings lied unceremoniously in an unpleasant surroundings.